Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are cutting through all the noise to tackle a subject that, well, it often feels shrouded in just a ton of complexity and, frankly, intimidating math.
Retirement.
Retirement. We've taken a whole stack of sources, articles, expert research, really detailed financial models, and we've tried to synthesize them into a clear, actionable roadmap for you.
And roadmap is exactly the right word. I mean, retirement planning, it's fundamentally about architecture. It's all about designing a bridge between your current financial reality and the very specific expectations you have for your life 20, 30, or even 40 years from now.
So it's not just about saving.
No, not at all. It's about defining a destination first.
In that destination, that core mission,
Yeah.
it seems to start with defining three key things. You have to secure your financial future by establishing the required lifestyle, the expected expenses that go with that lifestyle, and then the ultimate income goal you need in retirement.
Right.
It sounds so simple when you lay it out like that, but I think most people just start saving without ever really quantifying those three elements.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and that's precisely why they so often fall short. But before we get sucked into the beautiful but daunting world of spreadsheets, we have to focus on the crucial non-financial factors first.
The qualitative inputs.
Exactly. The things that frame the entire plan. Your age, your dependents, your health history, those are the obvious starting points.
But our sources all seem to highlight one factor above all the others, something subjective that really dictates whether the plan has any chance of working.
It's the anticipated quality of life. That's the engine of the entire model.
Right.
It's the whole game. Are you planning on a modest, quiet life focused on, I don't know, gardening?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you expect to fund yearly international travel, pick up expensive hobbies like sailing, or move to a high-cost city to be near your grandkids?
And those choices, they're not numbers, but they drive the numbers.
Massively. They drive the quantitative math to a massive degree. If your anticipated quality of life is high, your required corpus goal just jumps up exponentially.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The inputs define the output.
Yeah.
But here's where I think people often go wrong. They treat this roadmap like some one-time set-it-and-forget-it GPS coordinate.
Yes.
We have to emphasize that a retirement plan can never be static. So why is constant review and modification so mandatory, like almost a maintenance schedule for your money?
Well, because your life changes constantly, and the market certainly does. The plan has to always reflect shifts in your goals. Maybe you decided that expensive sailing hobby isn't for you after all.
Right.
It also has to reflect changes in income, unexpected expenses, and critically, how you feel about risk now versus how you felt about it 10 years ago. Your willingness changes.
So what are some of those specific life events that should make you, the listener, just drop everything and pull that plan out for a major review?
Our sources list several that should sound a financial alarm. Getting married or divorced, that fundamentally alters your entire expense structure and what you need as a safety net.
The birth of a child, obviously.
Obviously. But also subtler shifts, like a new job profile that significantly changes your income stability or your retirement benefits. And perhaps most significantly, any major change in your health status.
That's a big one.
It's huge. If you're diagnosed with a chronic condition, the model you built 5 years ago is now completely outdated because your projected health expenses have changed dramatically. These events mean your destination and the route to get there. It's all shifted. You have to recalibrate your internal GPS.
That is a great analogy. You wouldn't drive cross-country without occasionally checking the map for unexpected traffic or road closures. Okay, so let's unpack this journey by transitioning into the first major phase. Let's move into the long accumulation phase, the decades between your very first paycheck and your peak earning years. We'll start with the foundational stage, the young earner. So if you're in your 20s or early 30s, this is you. The advice here is pretty simple, but honestly, it often feels the most impossible to implement.
Because money's tight.
Money is tight and demands are really high.
Yeah, the financial characteristics of this stage are tough. Income is low, expenses are barely being met, and savings. Well, savings often feel inadequate or just sporadic. The typical mindset is reactionary. You pay the bills, you enjoy a little bit of life, and then maybe you save what's left over.
If anything's left over.
Exactly. If anything.
But our sources are crystal clear on this. You cannot move forward until the absolute first priority for any savings is met, no matter how tiny that initial contribution might be.
That initial claim on any savings has to be creating an emergency or a reserve fund. This is just non-negotiable.
The financial shock absorber.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's designed to manage any possible loss of income, getting laid off, an unexpected car repair, a big dental bill. Crucially, it protects you from having to derail your future by tapping into your growth investments when the market is low, or even worse, taking on high-interest debt just to cover a short-term crisis. It's the sturdy foundation under the skyscraper of your retirement plan.
I hear that, but let me play the skeptical listener for a second. If I'm a young earner and I've got a $5,000 credit card bill at 22% interest, why isn't paying off that debt the first priority over putting money into a zero-interest savings account for an emergency?
That's a fantastic and a very, very common question. And while that high-interest debt is a huge long-term drain, the emergency fund, typically, 3 to 6 months of expenses, it acts as a preventative shield.
A shield against what? More debt.
Exactly. If you put every spare penny you have toward that credit card and then your car breaks down, you have no choice but to put that repair
Right back on the credit card.
right back on the card. You're just digging a deeper hole. The reserve fund is the necessary defense that ensures when trouble hits, you don't undo the hard work you just accomplished. Once that reserve fund is fully stocked, then you go after the high-interest consumer debt with everything you've got.
That really reframes budgeting, too. When your income is tight, budgeting can feel like a punishment. It feels like restriction.
It shouldn't be. Budgeting in this early phase is crucial to actively generate savings for future goals, not just to live within your available income. When you force yourself to scrutinize your cash outflow, where did that $200 go last month? It immediately helps identify wasteful or just unnecessary expenditure.
So it becomes a tool for creation, not just restriction.
It transforms budgeting from a tool of restriction into a tool of active wealth creation. It proves that a modest lifestyle today creates huge financial leverage for you tomorrow.
Okay, so once that buffer is in place and the listener's ready to actually start investing,
Yeah.
how do they overcome that natural human tendency toward, procrastination or just a lack of discipline?
The answer is automation. Our sources all highlight the immense power of using systematic investment plans, or SIPs, and linking your bank accounts for automated investing.
And the benefit isn't what people think it is.
No, the primary benefit here isn't about market timing or trying to pick winners. The primary benefit is enforcing discipline. Think of it like a financial autopilot.
Takes the emotion out of it.
Completely. By ensuring the funds are invested automatically on the first of the month, you take the decision-making and all the procrastination out of your hands. Those automatic monthly contributions, even if they're small, they maximize the fund's time in the market, allowing that long runway of compounding to really work its magic.
So that's the young earner strategy. Build the foundation, enforce discipline, and then automate it. That brings us to the next phase. The middle years. We're talking late 30s through early 50s. This is the stage of peak earning and, crucially, of course, correction.
This is the ideal stage. It's the perfect time to address any shortfalls you might have identified from your 20s. By the middle earning years, your income is typically at its highest and most stable. And often, earlier financial goals, like, say, paying off a starter mortgage or saving for a child's undergraduate tuition, they may be met or getting close to completion.
So if I realize I missed a decade of aggressive saving, this is my last best window to really catch up.
This is absolutely your window. The mandate here is to apportion significantly larger portions of your available savings specifically to retirement accounts. If you were saving 10% in your 20s and you really needed to be at 15%, the middle earning years allow you to jump to 20 or even 25% to compensate for those early undersaved years.
And the earlier you identify and manage that shortfall, the better, just because of that compounding runway we keep talking about.
Precisely. Reworking the corpus requirement now at, say, age 40 gives you a much longer time period to make the adjustments. A shortfall fixed at age 40 means you have 25 years for those new, higher contributions to benefit from compounding growth.
Versus waiting until you're 55.
If you wait until 55, you are almost entirely reliant on just sheer principal contribution. You've lost the benefit of time and compound returns. The earlier you act, the gentler the required adjustment is.
Speaking of things that erode your principal, debt. Let's move into debt and risk management during this accumulation phase. Our sources give a very clear, almost surgical mandate about the debt-to-income, or DTI ratio, as we get closer to retirement.
The DTI ratio should ideally tend to 0 as retirement approaches. High debt is. It's absolutely corrosive to retirement security because those mandatory loan obligations, car payments, mortgage payments, student loans, They all have to be met from a fixed retirement income.
You have to enter retirement unburdened.
You have to.
Yeah.
That debt load is just transferring all your stress into your golden years.
And what's the broader financial consequence of carrying that debt? It forces you into making bad investment decisions later on, right?
It absolutely does. It forces the retiree to become overly conservative. If you have guaranteed monthly payments to make, you feel compelled to allocate a greater portion of your accumulated corpus to low-return, guaranteed products like annuities or guaranteed income bonds just to cover those mandatory payments.
And that just kills your growth potential.
It suppresses the overall potential growth of your entire portfolio, making it that much harder to fight inflation down the road.
Okay, so if the goal is to maximize growth during this long accumulation phase, what kind of investment strategy should we be employing?
With a long time horizon, your investments must be growth-oriented. Historically, this means assets like equity stocks, or mutual funds, or real estate, where you have an expectation of higher returns.
We take on the risk because we have the time.
We take the risk because the long investment horizon is the ultimate buffer. It allows your portfolio to absorb short-term market volatility, those inevitable dips and crashes, while maximizing the benefits of compounding over decades.
This brings us to a really fascinating and crucial psychological distinction: the dual nature of risk. We have to separate the ability to take risk from the willingness to take risk.
This distinction is so often the difference between success and failure in achieving your target corpus. First, your ability to take risk. That's determined by hard, objective factors.
At your age.
Exactly. Are you 30 or are you 60? Younger means a higher ability. You just have more time to recover any losses. Do you have a stable single income or a secure double income? Stable income means higher ability. Do you have low debt and high accumulated wealth? More cushion means higher ability. These are just facts.
But then you have the subjective side, the willingness. We've all seen people who, on paper, should be 100% invested in growth stocks, but they're just terrified of any kind of volatility.
And that's the willingness paradox. If an individual's comfort level, their emotional capacity to accept volatility is low, then their overall risk tolerance drops dramatically, regardless of their stellar financial ability. If you panic when the market dips 5% and you literally can't sleep at night, you need to dial down the risk.
So in that scenario where ability is high but willingness is low, what's the immediate consequence for their strategy? What do they have to do?
That investor has to choose more conservative investment choices. They have to prioritize the security of the principal they've invested over seeking the maximum possible return. They're essentially choosing peace of mind.
And the practical consequence of choosing those lower risk, lower return assets.
It means they will likely require a substantially higher monthly savings contribution to hit the same eventual corpus target. Their money just isn't generating the historical returns that growth assets provide. You are literally paying extra in monthly contributions for the comfort of sleeping soundly at night. That is the price of low willingness. Now that we've established the framework, the required lifestyle and the acceptable risk level, we can actually dive into the numbers. We need to calculate the target corpus. We have two primary estimation methods, and understanding the pitfalls of each is really essential for you, the listener.
Okay, method number one is the income replacement method, or IRM. It's simple.
Yeah.
You target 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income. What's the major risk in that simplicity?
The drawback is that it risks assuming your expenses will automatically go down in retirement, and that can be a really grave error. While some expenses do drop, that reduction can be entirely offset by rapidly rising health costs, which tend to accelerate significantly in late retirement. So relying solely on a percentage of income often leads to underestimation.
Is there a scenario where that replacement percentage can actually be quite a bit lower?
Yes, absolutely. Specifically for high earners. If you are a high earner and your pre-retirement income was heavily dedicated to two things: significant mandatory savings, like your retirement contributions, and high tax components, both of those cease upon retirement. So your required replacement ratio is likely to be much lower. You don't need to replace the portion of income you were simply funneling into retirement accounts or giving to the government.
Okay, so the alternative method requires much more surgical detail. The expense protection method, or EPM.
The EPM is mathematically more accurate, but it's far more cumbersome. It requires a detailed line-by-line listing of specific anticipated post-retirement expenses. You're projecting every gas bill, every grocery run, every planned vacation.
And the risk there is just missing something.
The inherent risk is that if this detailed listing overlooks or underestimates a critical expense, maybe a long-term care need or an expensive recurring medication, the resulting corpus calculation will be inaccurate. It forces realism, but it really demands diligence.
Can you give us some practical examples of how budget proportions fundamentally shift the moment retirement starts?
Absolutely. Think about the shifts. Expenses for categories like transportation, no more daily commute and personal upkeep, like expensive tailored work clothing, they often decrease significantly, which frees up cash.
But other things go up.
Right. However, expenses for health and medical care almost universally increase as people age, and often exponentially. Travel and leisure might also increase early on before they taper off later. The EPM forces you to confront these shifts in proportion.
So that detailed expense list gives us the raw number we need for year one. Now we have to project that number across 25 or 30 years and battle the great enemy of all financial planning. Inflation. The concept of years to retirement suddenly dictates everything.
That time horizon is fundamental because it acts as a dual lever. First, it dictates the cost of your future expenses, which are adjusted upward due to inflation. Second, a longer period provides a greater compounding runway for your current savings, which in turn lowers the required periodic savings allocation you need to make.
So if you have 30 years, you need to save less each month than if you only have 15.
Exactly. Time is your greatest asset.
And to truly combat inflation, we have to define the real rate of return. For a long-term financial planner, this is really the only rate that matters.
The inflation-adjusted rate is the periodic return on your investment after it's been adjusted for the erosion caused by inflation. It's critical because it determines the actual effective rate at which your invested funds will grow in real purchasing power terms. It's how you counteract the inflationary pressure that constantly pushes your target corpus higher.
Okay, here is where we get really interesting and share the specific calculation that is, frankly, the silent killer of so many retirement plans. If the listener expects their portfolio to earn 12% a year, but inflation is running at 6%, their gut instinct is to say, great, my real return is 6%. But that simple subtraction is a trap.
It is the most common mathematical trap in retail financial planning. You cannot just subtract because the compounding effect is working against you. If returns are 12% and inflation is 6%, the required calculation is real rate equals 1 plus the nominal rate divided by 1 plus the inflation rate, all minus 1.
So when we use the specific numbers from our sources, 1.12 divided by 1.06 minus 1, what is the actual chilling real rate of growth?
You are left with a real rate of growth of only 1.89% per annum.
1.89, not 6.
Not 6. Think about the magnitude of that difference. You might feel like you're sprinting at 12%, but inflation is like running on a huge treadmill that's moving backward at 6%. Your actual forward progress in terms of real purchasing power is barely 2%.
Wow.
Understanding this specific detail is the difference between achieving your goal and falling drastically short, because relying on that simple 6% assumption will severely underestimate the required savings contribution by tens of thousands of dollars over time.
That analogy of the treadmill is perfect for showing the reality of that erosion. So if we summarize this essential push and pull dynamic,
The rate of inflation is constantly pushing up the required savings amount and your overall corpus goal. Conversely, the high return that your invested corpus generates will reduce the savings contribution that's required of you. You are constantly in a battle between these two forces.
now what if, after doing all this complex math, an investor realizes they've been relying on unrealistic returns? Say they were modeling their success based on 15% annual returns, and now they realize they can only realistically expect 12%? What are the two primary levers they have to pull to manage that shortfall?
They have to make a choice between the goal and the time. They must either reduce their expected income requirement in retirement, which means they have to accept a lower anticipated quality of life, or they must delay their retirement date to increase the time available for accumulation and allow for more compounding.
You either lower the destination or you lengthen the trip.
That's it, exactly.
We also have a way to leverage existing investments, especially those high-risk growth assets we acquired during the early accumulation phase, to reduce the new monthly savings required. This is about making your current wealth do the heavy lifting.
Absolutely. Instead of just calculating the total amount needed and dividing it by the months remaining, you must first project the future value of your existing growth assets over the years you have left until retirement.
So you calculate what they'll be worth later.
Right. Let's say you have $100,000 in equity funds now, and you project it will grow to $500,000 by the time you retire. You deduct that projected $500,000 from the total corpus you need. The investor then only needs to save periodically for the adjusted value of the remaining goal.
That's a much smaller number.
It's much smaller. This technique ensures you don't oversave, and it maximizes the efficiency of your existing capital.
And what if that existing investment underperforms? If you do your periodic review and you realize a major asset is just dragging the whole portfolio down, what's the mandatory proactive step?
Passivity is the enemy here. If an investment is consistently underperforming against the market and against your expectations, the investor has to act, and act immediately. You should switch your funds out of that underperforming option and into better alternatives that align with your expected return.
And if that's not enough,
If switching alone isn't enough to correct the course, then the investor has to increase their monthly savings contribution to make up the difference. You have to face the music.
okay, so we've calculated the target, we've maximized our growth, and now we are entering the final years of work, the pre-retirement stage. This is typically 5 to 10 years out. The strategy now has to shift dramatically.
Completely.
Stop playing offense, aimed at maximizing growth, and we start playing defense, aimed at preserving our capital.
Preservation of assets is the new mantra. The priority is safety. And why? Because the time required for market recovery is no longer available to you? If you're 62 and the market drops 40%, you simply do not have 10 years to wait for a rebound. A significant fall in asset value that close to retirement risks wiping out years of hard-earned contributions, and that damage is potentially irreversible.
And this shift has to immediately impact our approach to debt. We discussed the DTI ratio tending to zero, but what's the specific mandate in this pre-retirement phase?
Aggression and abstinence. The individual should aggressively pay off or pay down all remaining debt as much as possible, including reducing mortgage principal. And crucially, they must refrain from taking on any new long-term obligations.
This is not the time to buy a new, expensive car on a 5-year loan if you plan to retire in 2 years.
Absolutely not. You must clear the deck.
And this defensive mindset, it changes the investment focus entirely. We're moving the money from growth vehicles to protection vehicles.
Exactly. In the accumulation phase, growth was a priority and volatility was acceptable. Now, the focus shifts entirely to protecting the corpus and generating stable, predictable income. This means you have to transition away from high-risk growth instruments towards safer, lower volatility options like high-grade bonds, fixed deposits, or maybe conservative hybrid funds. Capital preservation takes precedence over capital appreciation.
Our sources also emphasize the need for consolidation and just clarity in these final years before the retirement party.
Yes, consolidating your scattered investments and achieving greater clarity on exactly what your expenses will look like allows you to accurately assess the adequacy of your corpus against that finalized expense list. And if you find you have an excess income stream, maybe the kids are finally independent, that excess cash flow must be utilized to ramp up retirement savings immediately if there's any sign of a shortfall. It's the final sprint.
Let's move to essential coverage. Life insurance is often seen as disposable once the main earner retires, but our sources say it remains relevant in 2 specific critical scenarios.
It remains vital if there is outstanding debt, like a mortgage, that needs to be settled without burdening the surviving family. Secondly, it's relevant if a major portion of your guaranteed retirement income, say from a large pension benefit, would be lost or significantly reduced for the surviving spouse upon the retiree's death.
So the insurance policy acts as an income replacement for the survivor.
That's right. It's a safety net.
And health insurance is perhaps the single most important pre-retirement action item, especially since your employer-provided coverage ends the day you leave the job.
The prudent action is to buy a personal health insurance policy well before you retire, ideally in your 50s. This achieves 2 crucial goals. First, you secure a lower premium than you would get at 65. And second, you ensure the 2 to 4 year waiting period for certain chronic or pre-existing diseases passes before your retirement begins.
And you have to look for a specific feature.
You must seek coverage with mandatory lifetime renewability. This ensures you aren't dropped from the policy when you need the coverage most.
Okay, so once we hit retirement, the corpus has to generate income that can, ideally, keep pace with inflation. What types of income sources offer that kind of natural hedge?
Well, income sources that naturally protect against rising costs include things like real estate rental income, which usually adjusts with the cost of living and property values. Also, maintaining a strategic exposure to growth assets like equity, often through very conservative, hybrid, or balanced funds. These are the components designed to be inflation-beating.
And beyond just inflation hedging, what are the three key features any product selected for the distribution portfolio must have?
They have to offer three things at the same time. First, liquidity, which means easy access to your capital without penalty if an emergency arises. Second, they must have favorable tax advantages to maximize your net spendable income. And always, always, they must prioritize capital preservation above all else.
Annuities are a common fixture in these plans. If a listener purchases an immediate annuity to guarantee income, what is the critical consequence regarding access to their principal?
This is a point of common confusion. Once you purchase it, that annuity principal is irrevocably dedicated to the insurance company in exchange for that stream of payments. It is no longer accessible to the buyer, period.
So you can't go back and ask for the lump sum back.
Never. The only exception is if the contract specifically includes a return of purchase price provision upon the annuitant's death, which allows the heirs to receive the remaining principal. But the buyer never gets access while they're living.
We've established this shift to preservation, but why is it so imperative that even highly conservative retirees maintain a portion, even a small one, of growth assets in their distribution portfolio?
That small portion is essential to effectively counter the corrosive effects of inflation over a multi-decade retirement. If a retiree invests 100% in fixed income products, the real value of that fixed income, its purchasing power, will erode significantly over time. Even a small 5 to 10% allocation to growth assets provides the necessary hedge to prevent that real erosion and keep the corpus resilient.
Let's talk about the tax strategy of the National Pension System, or NPS. Our sources highlight two specific major benefits at the time of exit concerning the corpus itself.
At the exit stage, the NPS offers great tax efficiency. 60% of the accumulated corpus that you withdraw as a lump sum is entirely tax-exempt. Furthermore, the mandatory 40% of the corpus that must be used to buy an annuity is not taxed at the time of purchase. That offers substantial immediate tax relief.
But the story doesn't end there, right? What happens once that annuity starts paying out?
The subsequent annuity income that you receive monthly or annually from that mandatory 40% will be taxed as regular income, under the head salaries or income from other sources, depending on the jurisdiction. So while the initial accumulation and purchase stages offer tax relief, the eventual income stream is fully taxable.
And we can leverage tax knowledge strategically in retirement, specifically using tax-free income sources to manage our tax brackets.
This is an advanced strategy for maximizing your net income. Using tax-free income sources, like interest from municipal or tax-free bonds, helps the retiree strategically bridge an income gap that might otherwise require drawing heavily on taxable sources. By maintaining your income below certain thresholds, you can avoid inadvertently tipping yourself into the next higher tax bracket.
Which protects your overall marginal tax rate and your net worth.
Precisely.
Finally, despite all this perfect planning, what if the income generated by the corpus still proves to be inadequate? What are the three non-corpus withdrawal strategies a retiree can employ to make ends meet?
If the numbers just don't add up, they can manage the shortfall by 1. Postponing retirement, which extends their accumulation time and shortens their drawdown period. 2. They can consider a second career or part-time employment to supplement the income stream. Or 3. If they own their residence, they can utilize a reverse mortgage scheme, converting their home equity into a stable, non-taxable income stream without having to sell the house immediately. So we've reached retirement, but the plan now enters its most critical phase, managing the drawdowns, navigating market volatility, and overcoming the behavioral pitfalls we all carry. The money now has to last 20, 30, even 40 years.
Let's compare income generation methods. We have the uncertain dividend payout versus the systematic withdrawal plan, or SWP. What is the primary operational benefit of the SWP for a retiree?
The primary benefit of an SWP is really the certainty it provides. SWPs allow the retiree to redeem a fixed, predetermined amount of mutual fund units periodically. This offers a reliable, predictable income stream month after month.
Unlike dividends.
Unlike dividends, which are not definite at all. They're dependent on the fund's realized earnings and are entirely unpredictable, which is a very stressful way to budget in retirement.
And when choosing between receiving a dividend payout and redeeming units from an SWP, which factor should dominate that decision?
The choice is entirely dictated by maximizing your post-tax income. It's a tax optimization decision, plain and simple. The retiree has to compare which option gives them better tax benefits. So, comparing the tax on periodic dividend income versus the tax on long-term capital gains realized upon redemption. The structure that leaves you with more net income is the winner.
Let's talk about mitigating the sequence of returns risks. That's the risk of retiring right before a major market downturn.
Yeah.
If a retiree is stuck with a low-income portfolio because of low prevailing interest rates, how does staggering their investment mitigate that risk?
Staggering your investments into income-generating products over a period of time, say 3 or 4 years, it helps the retiree avoid the catastrophic risk of investing all their retirement funds at once when interest rates are historically depressed. By staggering, they retain the opportunity to potentially capture higher interest rates later in the cycle, which maximizes the long-term income potential of the total corpus.
And the ultimate tool for managing this risk and drawdown is the bucket strategy. Let's explain how this time-segmented approach works. We're segmenting the corpus based on a time horizon.
The bucket strategy is really intuitive. You stop viewing your corpus as one big pot of money, and you separate it based on when you need the money.
Okay, let's start with the immediate needs. The first bucket.
The first bucket is ultra-conservative. It holds the funds required to meet your immediate 3 to 5 years of expenses. This money is held in cash equivalents, short-term bonds, or highly liquid instruments. The goal is just safety and accessibility, ensuring the individual has adequate, ready, and safe funds to meet needs without ever worrying about a market dip.
And moving to the opposite end of the spectrum, the third bucket. This is where we keep that growth potential alive.
The third bucket holds the funds you'll need 20 or more years away from retirement. This is your deep future money. Because the time horizon is so long, this bucket can handle higher risks in growth assets like equity. The philosophy is, if these funds fall in value, there is sufficient time for them to recover before they are actually needed, which preserves the long-term purchasing power of the entire corpus.
And this is the genius of the strategy.
Hmm.
How does the bucket strategy manage the inevitable market downturn when it hits?
Well, when the risky assets in bucket 3 fall in value, they are not immediately replenished from safer assets in bucket 2. This is the crucial rule.
You leave them alone.
You leave them alone. Since those funds are not immediately needed for living expenses, those expenses are being covered by bucket 1, they are simply left to benefit from an eventual market recovery. You are only drawing from the safe, immediate bucket, which protects the rest of your capital from being sold off at a loss.
Let's address the nightmare scenario for any retiree. Longevity risk, or outliving your money. How can this be managed in mid or late retirement when the remaining runway is shrinking?
At that stage, you really need to convert non-financial assets into resources. Longevity risk can be managed by converting large, non-liquid assets like, say, real estate if it's not their primary residence, or high-value jewelry or collectibles into financial resources. Alternatively, they could purchase a deferred annuity that guarantees a lifetime income stream starting later, say at age 85, ensuring they never run out of income regardless of how long they live.
Conversely, why is an unexpected large outflow of funds early in retirement particularly damaging to the long-term sustainability of the corpus?
It's just devastating because it triggers the sequence of returns risk at its absolute worst. A large withdrawal early in the retirement period limits the benefits of compounding to the remaining corpus for the entire duration of retirement. It reduces the base from which all future growth must occur, and that causes a greater and, frankly, irreversible impact.
It's a loss of compounding that you just can't get back.
You can never get it back.
Before we wrap up the structural elements, a quick word on the administrative side beneficiary review. This is something that's often missed during the periodic checkup.
It is essential and so often forgotten. The periodic review must include checking and updating the beneficiaries identified in your different investments through nominations, joint holdings, and other means. Failing to update beneficiaries after a major life event, like a divorce or a remarriage, can lead to devastating legal complications and financial burdens for your actual intended heirs.
Okay, finally, let's explore the psychological traps that can undermine even the most perfectly calculated plans. We have two core behavioral biases to discuss. The first is familiarity bias.
Familiarity bias is when investors choose products they are comfortable or familiar with, maybe a specific stock because they worked in that industry, or a local bond, rather than investing in assets that their portfolio and their current stage of retirement actually demands. They prioritize emotional comfort over optimal diversification, and that leads to suboptimal portfolio performance.
And the second bias, anchoring.
Anchoring occurs when investors hold on to past, irrelevant information. The classic example is holding on to a losing stock, hoping it will regain a previous high price level it achieved years ago. This bias completely ignores the current viability of the asset and leads directly to portfolio underperformance. You just can't let yesterday's ghost price dictate today's rational decision.
We've covered a massive distance today. We've moved from the philosophical input of defining your ideal retirement lifestyle through the mechanics of accumulation and the chilling reality of inflation, all the way to defensive distribution strategies and managing your own mind against bias.
And if there are two critical numbers to take away that define the practical challenge of retirement planning, remember these. First, the debt-to-income ratio must ideally tend towards zero as retirement approaches. You need to enter retirement free of those burdens. And second, and most crucial, remember the true cost of inflation, quantified by that real rate of return calculation. If you have 12% returns and 6% inflation, your real growth is only 1.89%.
That massive difference is the silent killer.
It's the silent killer, and it forces you to be honest about how hard your money is truly working.
It's a sobering reality check. It forces you to ask, am I saving enough, or am I just thinking I'm saving enough?
And that leads to our final provocative thought for you, the learner. We spent some time distinguishing between your financial risk ability, which is determined by objective facts like your age and your wealth, and your risk willingness, which is determined by your emotional comfort level regarding volatility. Think about which of these two factors currently dominates your investment choices. Are you making choices based on what you can financially afford to do, or only on what you feel comfortable doing? And what implications might that willingness-driven decision have for achieving your long-term corpus target? That gap between ability and willingness is often the single most expensive mistake a retiree makes. That's something worth diving deep into tonight.